evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the January 12th. I will stand with all of y'all for our prayer and our pledge. I'll call on our commission chaplain, Commissioner Romero.
I have to remind him to turn the microphone. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mayor Carr, commissioners, and the body. Before I pray, I would like to invite up Miss Josie Daniel, my special guest this evening, if she would come up. So as she's walking up here, Miss Josie is going to stand beside me. I'm doing something different this year. I believe in involving our youth, and so I'm going to have her lead the Pledge of Allegiance with me this evening. Josie is a 5th grader at Stewartsboro Elementary School in my district. So from time to time, I'm going to be picking or try to select different students from different schools to come and, be involved with the democratic process. Josie is she's on the cheer team, dance team, and she is part of the gymnastics. So if y'all could let's clap for Josie, and we'll go from there. All righty, let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this new day, this new season, and this new year. For we know that it's because of you that we are here on this earth to do your work for the people. I pray that we as a body are refreshed, refocused, and ready to tend to the county needs and matters. I ask that you continue to watch over and pray over our public safety personnel every single day. I also ask that you continue to do the same for our military. We thank them for their services. As we embark upon this new year, give us the wisdom and patience to press forward for our citizens of Rutherford County, even when certain topics or issues may not be too easy to discuss. We are all here for one reason and one reason only, and that is to make sure that we can live, work, and play in the best county in our great state of Tennessee. Philippians 3:14 reminds us to press towards the mark. So let us keep that in mind and remain all on one accord. I ask this and all other things in your name. Amen. Miss Josie, you ready to lead the pledge? Here you go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Turn this way.
Okay.
Fill blue. God keep them strong forever and ever. It is with pride and love that we salute the flag of Tennessee. Thank you.
Thank you. You may be seated. Calling our County Clerk, Lisa Crowell, to call the roll.
Commissioner Oliver.
Present. Here.
Commissioner Rather.
Here.
Commissioner P.
Here.
Commissioner Davison.
Here.
Commissioner Beverly.
Here.
Commissioner Cush.
Present.
Commissioner Reed.
Here.
Commissioner James.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Boyd.
Here.
Commissioner Paul Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Irvin.
Here.
Commissioner Harris.
Here.
Commissioner Dodd.
Here.
Chairman Phillips.
Present.
Commissioner McAdoo. Commissioner McMurray.
Here.
Commissioner Gooch.
Here.
Commissioner Sereno.
Yeah.
We have a quorum, 21 present.
Thank you, ma'am. This time I'll call on our Chairman Pro Tem Trey Gooch for the reading and approval of our December minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The clerk's office has reviewed these minutes. I've also reviewed them, find everything to be in order. My motion is to dispense with the reading and approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion
Second.
and a second to approve our December minutes. Any questions or comments? All those in favor to approve that motion to approve our minutes from December, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. This time we have a pretty special resolution. I'm going to call on our county historian, Greg Tucker, and Chairman of Health and Ed, Phil Dodd, if they would come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am pleased to be a part of this recognition today, recognizing an iconic and enduring Rutherford business and the family responsible for that business. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to invite Mr. Raleigh Holden, Jr. to come forward and stand with me.
Mr. Holden.
This is a resolution of recognition and congratulations to Holden Hardware and the Holden family. Whereas on January 31st, 1948, brothers Raleigh and Horace Holden opened Holden Hardware on the west side of the Rutherford County Courthouse Square, featuring Wilson Sporting Goods, Glidden Paints, and Delta Woodworking Tools. On the occasion of the opening, Raleigh Holden Sr. said, quote, "Murfreesboro has grown and is growing to a point that another hardware store can help serve the people. We have confidence in the future of this city." And whereas this month, January 2023, marks the 75th anniversary of this iconic business and its service to the community as the oldest continuous business in one location on the public square. And whereas upon the death of Horace Holden in the early 1950s, Raleigh Holden Sr. became the sole owner of the business, with his wife Catherine keeping the store books and records. The Holdens prospered and raised their family. And whereas through 7.5 decades, the extensive and eclectic inventory of the hardware store has served the common and rare needs of the Rutherford community. Nowhere else in the region can you find 8 sizes of galvanized wash tubs ready for purchase right off the shelf. And whereas Holden Hardware is now owned by Raleigh Holden Jr., who personally supplements the retail business through his services as a master locksmith. And finally, whereas Raleigh Holden Jr. has prepared a written, quote, brief history of Holden Hardware that has been added to the business history records permanently preserved in the Rutherford County Archives. Now, therefore, the Rutherford County Commission and Joe S. Carr, Mayor of Rutherford County, do hereby recognize, congratulate, and thank Holden Hardware and the Holden family for 75 years of business on the square and service to Rutherford County. Resolved this 12th day of January, 2021. Raleigh Holden Jr. There's.
Make a motion first. I make a motion to approve this resolution and look for a second.
We have a motion to approve and a number of seconds. All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Raleigh, say a word for us.
Greg, thank you for those kind comments. Phil, thank you for being not only my county commissioner, but being a longtime friend, and your family has been a good friend of our families. Chairman Phillips, Mayor Carr, members of the County Commission, thank you for recognizing and honoring my parents, myself, and our business. Thank you.
For those of you that don't know Raleigh very well, I had a conversation with him about a year or so ago and asked him what, if anything was going on in particular, and he kind of let it slip that they were celebrating their 75th anniversary this coming January, which is today. And of course, I said, we're going to have to do something about that, Raleigh, and it embarrassed him to the point where he kept trying to talk me out of it for months. And as you can tell, he's a very humble man, and we're lucky to have that institution still serving the people of Murfreesboro, Rutherford County on the square. Thank you, Raleigh. Public comments. We had no one sign up. I've had a request from someone that that wanted to make some public comments. I've told him that he couldn't because he wasn't on the list, but if anyone wants to make a motion to suspend the rules and allow for those public comments, I'll entertain that motion.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. If you would, please come forward. I'm sorry. Motion carries. You got 3 minutes. Name and address, if you would, please, sir.
My name is Carl Burning. I live on Herschel Hudson Road at Lascassas. The Doctor of Trash, Reverend Piercy, is my commissioner. I've just got a question in my mind. I've had it for a long time, but I wasn't prepared to do this tonight. I wore a clean T-shirt, but it's got a stain right here, so I'm not ready. Came out right from the supper table. On the consent agenda, I watched it over the last several months and noticed that what just happens, it stands up with me. Then on other times we have motions that come up and people we try to vote on them, and they stop and say, wait, it has to go on the board because there's money involved. And I don't know the rules. That's what I'm here to clarify for myself and maybe some of y'all. Are things on the consent agenda that money is spent on, should they be voted because money is appropriated or spent, the people's money is spent? Is there a rule they have to be voted on the board, so to speak? Like, no? Is there a sergeant of arms? Is there a person in charge?
You're here to make comments.
Oh, not to ask questions.
Won't field
Okay.
questions.
Well, that's my only quandary. Whatever y'all do, if you know it's right, it's right. I just don't know. So this is my opportunity to ask you. If you'd ever thought of it before, I'd appreciate you finding out an answer for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming up. Item H on our agenda is elections and confirmations. I'll call on our steering vice chair, Chairman Pettis Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Elections and confirmations. Item number 1 deals with elections of notaries. Listings of notaries can be found on your iPad, Commissioners. Mr. Chairman, I move to confirm the election of these individuals as Rutherford County notaries.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to elect the notaries. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries.
Item number 2, steering would like to confirm Judicial Commissioner Connor Seal. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
I have a motion and a second to confirm Connor Seal as a Judicial Commissioner. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion to approve carries.
Item number 3, steering wishes to confirm Cody York to the Linebaugh Library Board and Stones River Regional Library Board to fill a retiring member's seat. Term to expire August 2023. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
We have a motion and a second to confirm Cody York to the Linebaugh Library Board. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this concludes the business and elections of confirmations.
Item I deals with consent agenda. I'll call on our Chairman Pro Tem Trey Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The 7 items on the consent agenda I do find appropriate. The chairmen of these committees also find them appropriate. My motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion to approve our consent agenda and a second. Any questions or discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I have a
Joshua.
question about what we heard on the consent agenda. Would it not be feasible just to put us on the board on the consent agenda, just for any potential thing with money, if that is an issue for us?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that, Commissioner James? I didn't hear it.
Well, would it not benefit us just to go for every consent agenda, just to be on the board, just to prevent for any occurrence that money might be in question?
Consent agenda is always on the board.
I'm sorry, I had that wrong. I was thinking it wasn't, not always.
Other questions or comments? Once again, to approve the consent agenda will be on the board. All those in present, but if you would, please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Count the vote.
21 yes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Chairman Phillips,
Yes.
would it be
Commissioner Piercy.
possible for someone at the bench to answer Mr. Burning's question now, since we've just voted on the consent agenda? He may not be the only one with concerns or just don't understand.
If you put that in form of a motion, we'll try to get someone to answer it.
I will make the motion for someone to answer Mr. Burning's question.
Second.
Go ahead and rule in favor of that. Call on our county attorney.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that, and I might also ask our finance director too, but generally with appropriations, you need to have a roll call vote so that the public can see which commissioners voted for or against the appropriation. And when you do a verbal or a vocal roll call vote, it's hard to discern who was a yes and who was a no. And so oftentimes on the consent agenda, there are appropriation items which have already made its way through the committee process, and so that's why we go up on the board, which is essentially, that's a roll call vote. It's just an electronic version of it. I'd also point to the commission's internal rules and regulations, which specifically state that all commissioner votes on the consent agenda shall be individually recorded, either by roll call or the clerk, or in electronic format. And so that's why we do it.
Mr. Burning, are you good? Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you bringing that up, Commissioner Piercy. Next on our item is public hearings. I'll call on our planning director, Doug DeMasi. Where is he? I'm sorry. Well, how about that? Let's strike one tonight, you guys. Seeing none of that, if it's okay with our budget chairman, Robert P., I'm going to move health and ed up one spot, if that's okay, and we'll get right into our committee reports. And I'll call on our health and ed chairman, if you would, Commissioner Philip Dodd, to come up. And also Dr. Sullivan from our school superintendent, if he's here. And Chairman Tammy Sharp from the school board. Commissioner Jonathan Beverly.
Mr. Chairman, if able, I'd like to invite the rest of the school board who are in attendance to come up as well.
Please do.
As you can see, we have a full house tonight, so I'll be very brief. We are here tonight to honor Principal April Sneed for her work over at Whitworth Buchanan Middle School. She has done an impeccable job there, raising the caliber of education within my district and Rutherford County schools. And you see everyone standing up here today to honor her, but show we are united in our commitment to education in this county, and we want to honor those who work day in and day out to make that a reality for everyone. So at this moment, I'd like to invite Dr. Sullivan up to say a few words.
So I want to also recognize Ms. Sneed. Ms. Sneed had the challenge several years ago of taking over a school that was on the priority list. Within 1 year, they moved very quickly to recognized for student growth. They've been a reward school. And this last year, Ms. Sneed was not only recognized as our Rutherford County Principal of the Year, she was recognized as the Middle Tennessee Principal of the Year, and then she was selected as one of the 3 Mid-Grand Division Principals of the Year. There are 147 districts in the state, and each one of those schools, us in particular, we have 50 schools, and so you're talking about thousands of principals that she was up in competition for, and the caliber of instruction and just teaching students the right way to act, behave, learn, She has turned around the school with some of the same faculty members. We could not be more proud of the work that she does, and I also want to take a minute to recognize our board. We have our chair, Ms. Tammy Sharp, Mr. Caleb Tidwell, our vice chair. We have Ms. Claire Maxwell, Mr. Coy Young, and then Ms. Sheila Bratton. And not with us tonight, but still very much in support, Ms. Frances Rosales and Ms. Katie Darby. So we are very much a united front, as Commissioner James said, and we are, or Beverly said, and we are very thrilled, proud, and honored to have Ms. Sneed with us and leading our district. She serves as our middle school principal lead as well. So.
I would like, just in a form of solidarity, I'd like the Health and Ed Committee to join us up here as well, if you wish. So anybody on Health and Ed that would care to do so, please feel free to join us.
As if we have more room. Principal Sneed, if you want to bring your family up here, we'd love to have them up here with you. Resolution of appreciation for Principal April Sneed. Whereas the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners should recognize and celebrate those individuals who make a profound impact on people in the communities of Rutherford County. And whereas April Sneed has served Rutherford County with dedication and distinction for 4 years as principal of Whitworth Buchanan Middle School. And whereas during her tenure, the school and students have thrived with their academic achievement and growth. Whereas the school became the first from Rutherford County to be recognized as a model school by the International Center for Leadership, based on the school's rapid improvement and straightforward strategies to help other schools achieve success. And whereas Ms. Sneed was nominated by the Tennessee Department of Education as a finalist for Tennessee Teacher of the Year, and whereas Ms. Sneed was selected by the Tennessee Department of Education as Principal of the Year for the Middle Tennessee region. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners at its regular session on this 12th day of January 2023, does hereby extend sincere appreciation to April Sneed for her dedicated service to the citizens of Rutherford County and wish her continued success in her as an education leader in Rutherford County. Be it further resolved, a copy of this resolution of appreciation be forwarded to Ms. Sneed by the clerk of this legislative body. Resolved this day, this 12th day of January 2023. Mr. Chairman, I move.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye. Aye. Everyone stand.
One last thing I want to say, and we'll give you a second to speak, but you look around these people who are standing up here with you. You have representatives from your professional and personal life, but we want to say the work you have done will be felt for generations in our county, and we thank you very much for your dedication.
Thank you so much. I want to thank everyone. Wow, it is overwhelming to stand in front of so many people that represent an impactful profession that many of us are a part of every day. I heard my name a lot the last few minutes, but this is not just my recognition. This is not my resolution. Nothing I do is mine alone. I have my students, my parents, my faculty and staff to thank for the rapid improvement and the hard work. Without them, none of this would have been possible. So I am very proud of the hard work of a lot of my school community, and I'm very proud to be part of Rutherford County Schools. So commissioners, thank you so much. Commissioner Beverly, thank you.
Thank you, Principal Sneed. Commissioner Joshua James, a couple of months ago, indicated that we probably need to be recognizing educators for the education portion of our school system. Commissioner Beverly has picked up on that real quick, and we find it really easy to honor football teams and basketball teams and baseball teams, but this type of recognition is deserved above and beyond for their service, not only to the county, but to the kids of our county. So, job well done, Principal Sneed. Thank you. We got a few more minutes. Robert, you want to come up? Commissioner P.? Commissioner P., Chairman of Budget, Finance, and Investment.
Thank you, Chairman. Carl, you still here? A little bit more of an answer from the budget end. When we put something on a consent agenda, that's not new money as a rule. If there's, usually that's money being transferred, but even then, if there's any money in there, it will be voted on, as the Chairman mentioned. But if it goes on there from budget, there's not new money. It's usually a transfer already within the budget. Okay, the first resolution that I've got tonight is item L1A, and this has to do with vehicles and the leasing. Be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the general purpose fund be amended as follows: for the Sheriff's Office, a decrease in restricted fund balance of $1,357,515 and a decrease in expenditures for lease payments of $755,229 and increase expenditures for motor vehicles $2,112,744. Resolve this 12th day of January 2023. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. For this will be on the board. Would please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
21 yes.
Thank you.
Item L1B, resolution, whereas Rutherford County previously authorized funding for Walter Hill, Lascassas, Christiana, and Dale Webb public health and safety buildings, and entered into an agreement with the Public Building Authority of Rutherford County, the PBA, for the design, construction, and furnishing of those aforementioned buildings. And whereas material price escalation and labor shortages have increased the guaranteed maximum price obtained by the PBA for the Walter Hill and Lascassas public health and safety buildings by $1,400,000 each. And whereas the county desires to postpone the construction of and reduce funding for the Dale Webb Public Health and Safety Building by $2,800,000 and apply those funds equally to Walter Hill and Lascassas Public Health and Safety Buildings. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the construction be postponed and funding for the Dale Webb Public Health and Safety Buildings be reduced by $2,800,000, and that those funds be applied equally to the Walter Hill and Lascassas Public Health and Safety Buildings. Resolved this 12th day of January 2023. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
We have a motion and a second. Questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions.
Mr. James.
Can you refresh me how the AARP, the money works for these, for the quote unquote free money, the 5 out of the 6 that we've approved to build?
On our finance directors.
How it works is that?
Well, I guess what I'm wondering is down the road, how likely are we going to need more money for Rockville and Kittrell, and therefore look at taking it away from Dale Webb more?
Well, for example, the money for Dale Webb is in our General Capital Projects Fund. That money is not restricted, does not have a time frame on it, like the other public health and safety buildings is direct ARPA funding, and so those do have a time frame on it, so that's why we have pulled from the Dale Webb building. Additionally, that building was previously scheduled and is still was scheduled to be done in the 6th position. I believe that's how we've inherited those projects. So that's why we've pulled from Del Webb for those two reasons, because there's a lot more flexibility with those funds than there are the actual ARPA funds for the first 5 public health and safety buildings.
Okay, so if we don't have to wait, if Del Webb is not part of the ARPA money, why do we have to wait as the last one to be built when we're funding it ourselves?
Well, and I don't want to speak for the PBA, but these projects have been assigned to the PBA, and I do believe it would be tough for a contractor to build 3 to 6 buildings at the same time for us. So I think the plan was to stagger them, 2, 2, and 2 was my understanding, to give time for the contractor to build them. And originally all 6 were part of ARPA funds, but as the budget increased, that's how we shifted the Del Webb to the capital project.
I'd like to try to get ahead of it before the increase keeps going with time as it goes, especially if we're not waiting on the money from ARPA to come in. But at the same point, I wanted to kind of make sure that we don't pull so much that we keep pushing it down the road that it seems like it's never going to get here. I'd like just confirmation that the construction is going to be on schedule, or it's the intent of keeping it on schedule.
I'll speak from my end, and then I'll turn it over to the mayor. But I do not believe at this time that anything has been delayed. From our end, we do this very frequently with school projects where we shift funding around for time basis, but I do not believe anything's been delayed on my end, but I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Nothing's been delayed.
Well, that's right, but it's not in the resolution, so maybe we can make an amendment to show that in the resolution. It said it would be postponed. It didn't say, so I would like to just make sure that that's not. Third paragraph, whereas the county desires to postpone the construction of and reduce the funding of the Del Webb. I'd like to find some way where we're not postponing that so that it's just in perpetuity. We never know when it's going to happen.
Give me just a second.
So to clarify the way we have to word that, we're postponing the funding is what we're doing, and by postponing the funding, it has to be worded that way because at this moment in time right now, there is not enough funding for Del Webb. However, that does not postpone the project. We do that quite often with school buildings. We'll enter the design phase. We've done that with our Goldstein project where we've shifted money for architect cost for design cost. So that doesn't delay the project. It's just postponing the funding mechanism, and I believe we'll have several options going into this next budget year to fund that project.
Indeed, we do have several options. We have a little time to determine our best option. The project for Del Webb is not delayed. It's the funding that is being postponed so we can fund these other projects. But the deliverable will not be postponed as of today, and we don't expect it to be if these options become available like we anticipate.
And I'll add, you asked a question about Kittrell and Rockville. At this time, there's no indication that those projects are still on budget. The PBA has not requested any additional funding from us at this time. So, and I think those projects are moving along quite smoothly.
Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Commissioner McMurray.
As this relates to being in my district, I echo what Commissioner James says. So we just want to make sure that everything is still on par and up the schedule. So I think that's why he was bringing it up. So.
The answer is yes. We're borrowing from Del Webb. We're not canceling Del Webb, and we fully anticipate Del Webb to come online on time and on schedule.
And if I could add, we expect Del Webb to come online just like we expect Christiana to come online. Okay?
I'd just like to have it reflected somewhere, whether it's in the resolution or in the minutes, that this is what we're saying, we're agreeing. We're not trying to risk ourselves of never seeing the end of the light at the end of this tunnel on this one, that we might keep robbing Peter to pay Paul. I'd like some kind of confirmation that we're going to come back to it.
At the flip side of this, Commissioners, we can't make any guarantees, and we can't anticipate fully for the unexpected. So tonight and every night previous, it's been the position of the mayor's office, the finance director, and the county commission that Del Webb would come online as anticipated. But just like when we had with COVID and so many other anticipated events, we can't predict the future, so we can't lock ourselves in to that extent. It's just you have my word that we're doing everything we can, and indeed I believe we found a couple of solutions to make sure that Del Webb is funded in the time frame that it was originally scheduled, and that's what we intend to do. Again, but I can't give you a guarantee because just like with COVID, we don't know what's going to happen. So I'm not willing to paint myself into a corner.
I respect that. I just don't like how it specifically says of desires to postpone the construction, but I get why it says it. I just don't like that wording. I don't like that because it doesn't tell me when we're going to come back to it. Is there any kind of what's the next thing that's going to make us postpone and postpone again after that, and so on and so on. I'd like to try to get ahead of that and not risk, at least out at the edge of my district, not having one because we can't get back to it. Because I don't even know, does ARP provide the equipment for these facilities, or is just the building structure itself?
Did you have can you repeat your question for me? I'm sorry.
I just want to confirm my thoughts on something. Does ARP provide the equipment, the money for the equipment for the facilities, or is it just the facilities itself?
No, so we have budgeted we have shifted funds around. ARPA has provided for some of the facilities the FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment, the low voltage, our technology for those buildings. So for the first two projects, and we have shifted some of that FF&E for some of the later projects, specifically Walter Hill, Lascassas, and Christiana, into our general capital projects funds. So those are fully funded as part of this, as part of all 6 of these buildings.
Other questions?
Well, you didn't bother to ask me. I think the only way you're going to ensure that you've got this building coming is to make an amendment, put a date on it, and get 11 commissioners to vote and say, yes, we'll fund this. That's the only way you've got an assurance, because regardless of what anybody up here says, we'll build you this building. Until that money is appropriated, you don't have a building.
That's what I thought I was starting to, but I guess let me word it. I'd like to make an amendment that we're going to that we're committed to building all 6 of these facilities. That I understand the order and I understand ARP money now, but we're committed to building it and within the accordance of the original schedule.
Second.
We want you to repeat the amendment, please.
I'd like to request an amendment that we look for replacing the money found in here and maintaining that Del Webb stay on the original schedule, in accordance with the original schedule, as soon as we can.
We have an amendment. Commissioner Johnson, let's get a second before we...
Second.
Motion to amend the original motion and a second. Now discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I have a question.
Oliver.
Would it suffice, Commissioner James, if it just deleted postpone construction and just said reduce funding? Would that be sufficient?
So the reason we have to do that, as soon as you pull funding from the project, that automatically I have to postpone that because there's no money to fund it. So I have to, that's the reason it's worded that way. Now, I want to make a comment on your amendment right there. If you're asking us to find the funding, we'll be glad to. But if you want to apply funding tonight, you'll have to direct me on where you would like that money to come from.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I know if you had found the money outside of moving it from this, outside of the moving money around for the buildings, it wouldn't even be an issue. My issue is I just want to make sure, I guess my amendment would be that we find a way to keep our original schedule on the building plan.
May I interject? And that's something I mentioned to the finance director. In legalese terms, we use the phrase best efforts. So if we want to add an amendment that the commission and the budget committee or the finance director will make its best efforts to find additional funding for the construction of Del Webb to keep it on track and constructed on time, that could be put in the resolution, and that's at least some sort of a commitment from the commission. That's just a suggestion.
I can work with that, the best efforts, because that's what we're trying to do, is our best efforts on this. So I'd adjust my motion if my second would adjust.
Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to table this discussion while we go through our public hearings, and then it can be reworded when we take this back up after our public hearings, okay? We're a little bit late, but at this time we have, I think, 2 public hearings scheduled, and we'll call on our planning director, Doug DeMasi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everyone. Happy New Year to you all. Hope everyone's doing well tonight. We do have 2 public hearings tonight, as Chairman Phillips alluded to. The first is for a piece of property located along Franklin Road. This is by Jeffrey Turner. The property is currently zoned residential medium density, or RM. The proposed zoning is commercial services, and the size of the property is about 4.5 acres. Information provided by the applicant, and this will all be on your iPads as part of our agenda packet to you, states that he would like to zone this property for a business rental type facility. He envisions building a pre-engineered building in a range of 10 to 15,000 square feet. No end user at this point, so you won't find a concept plan in your agenda packets, but he does feel that this would be consistent, as there are several other properties in this area that have also been zoned non-residentially or commercially over the last several years. I will refer you to the applicant's letter in your agenda packets for a little additional information on that. Being that there's not a specific use for this, the applicant, of course, does understand that any new construction on this property would be required to submit an engineered site plan to our office for review. This would include looking at the access to the property from Highway 96 and associated parking, which could include a traffic study if we felt one was necessary, landscape and screening, and also our performance standards. The Planning Commission reiterated some questions about specific intent for the property. The applicant again answered that he didn't have any at this particular time. There was also some questions of whether or not there was an existing septic system on the property, and he answered that there was. And there was a neighboring property owner that had some questions about what was being proposed, and the applicant kind of just gave an overview similar to what I'd already discussed earlier in my presentation. Following the public hearing, the Planning Commission did recommend approval by a unanimous vote. At this time, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. DeMasi? Hearing none, I'll declare the public hearing open for rezoning request REZ 22-028 for Jeffrey Turner. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request, please come forward. Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Commissioner P. Nope, I'm sorry, Commissioner Reed.
I'll answer to anything. I move for its approval with staff comments.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve and a second. Any questions, any discussion? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one other public hearing tonight. This is by Mr. John Harney for Thorsport Incorporated. This is located along Armstrong Valley Road. The existing zoning is residential medium density, and the proposed zoning is agricultural residential, AR, and the size of this property is about 44 acres. Information provided by the applicant states that they would like to operate a large animal veterinary practice on this property. You'll see in the staff report that I copied and pasted some information from their application that they submitted. I'm not going to read that. I'll let you take a look at that, and if you've got more questions, I'll be happy to talk about it. The use of the property as a large animal veterinary practice is actually something they currently do for their own animals on the property. This is all part of the Thorsport complex, but they would like to open it up for others to bring in large animals, horses, and whatnot. This use is classified as agricultural sales and services in our zoning ordinance, but it's not allowed in the residential medium district, the RM district. It is, however, allowed in the agricultural residential district by special exception. Since both of these properties are greater than 5 acres in size, which is the minimum district of that zone, they are qualified to ask for this particular zone. This is actually a down zoning. The RM allows for a minimum of 15,000 square feet, whereas the AR actually requires a minimum of 5 acres. So this is actually, if they wanted to develop it, they'd be actually getting a lot less on the property. They also understand that this use that they're seeking is not a use that's approved as of right. They do have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special exception. So even if you approve the zoning tonight, you are not approving the use of the property as the large animal veterinary practice. Properties currently have access to Armstrong Valley Road. Of course, any new access drives, improvements to the property along a county road would have to be approved by the County Highway Department, and the Board of Zoning Appeals during their special exception application process can require additional parking if necessary. This would also apply to any additional screening or landscaping on the property and also the performance standards. There was little discussion from the Planning Commission on this item. The applicant did clarify the request was going to be for the entire 44 acres and not just a portion of it, and it's also going to be used in conjunction with the existing farm, but like I said earlier, they are going to be opening it up for others to bring large animals onto the property. Following this discussion in the public hearing, the Planning Commission did recommend approval by a unanimous vote. Once again, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. DeMasi? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing open for rezoning request REZ 22-029, John Harney. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request, please come forward. Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Commissioner Reed.
Mr. Chairman, I just think it's pretty exciting to have an agricultural residential rezoning that we've had so few of those in the past, that tonight I'm honored to make that motion to approve with staff comments.
I have a motion and a second to approve REZ 22-029 rezoning request. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Mr. DeMasi, thank you. Happy New Year. Getting back to our standing committee reports. Chairman P.
Chairman Phillips, I'd like to reread the last two paragraphs just to refresh our memory, and also we'll have our county attorney read the amendment to this afterwards. The reason I wanted to reread this, I had a page stick together, so you didn't hear the last paragraph, I don't believe. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the funding for all aspects of the building be increased to $7,043,452.44, and the general fund be amended as follows: to transfer the additional funds to the General Capital Projects Fund for the project, a decrease in restricted fund balance of $680,393, and increase in expenditures transfer to other funds, $680,393. Be it further resolved that the county mayor and any other necessary officials of Rutherford County shall be, and the same hereby are authorized to execute an amended agreement with the PBA. A copy of the same being attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein by reference as if set forth herein at length verbatim, to oversee the design, construction, and furnishings of the building through completion. Resolved this 12th day of January 2023. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that was the one, that what you're reading there is for the next item. I believe that what you just read there was part of the one-stop amendment.
Okay. Well, I've got a page misplaced. Forgive me, please. What is that, strike one, or is that two for me? So.
Yeah.
So we're back to reading
We're back
our
to item
amendment.
L1B, which is Walter Hill and Lascassas Public Health and Safety Buildings. And I believe that Commissioner James was making some type of an amendment to the motion.
Yes, my amendment, if I may, Chair. The, to word it, it's, so bear with me listening, is that the County Commission states their commitment to the Del Webb Public Health and Safety Building, commits to making its best efforts to replace the money taken from Del Webb, and to further commit to make in its best efforts build the Del Webb building in accordance with the original schedule.
Second.
We had a motion and amendment on the floor earlier. I can just dissolve that, and this replaces the earlier amendment to the motion and the second. Anyone have any questions on this? Not, we'll be voting on the amendment to the motion first. I guess we'll be on the board for this, so if you would, please cast your vote on the amendment.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
19 yes, 1 no, 1 abstain.
The amendment to the motion passes. Now we're voting on the original motion. Any questions, other questions or comments on that? This one will also be on the board, so if you would, please cast your vote. Once again, we're voting on the original motion amended.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
21 yes.
Thank you. Commissioner P.
Okay, now we get back to the one-stop. Item L1C, whereas the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners previously funded any and all aspects of the one-stop building located at the northwest corner of Blaze Drive and Fortress Boulevard in Murfreesboro in the amount of $6,363,060 in December 2021. Whereas due to the various cost overruns, including site construction items, specific design changes, scope and budget items, and rising cost of construction materials and services, additional funds are needed to construct, furnish, and complete the building in the amount of $981,778.64. And whereas in December 2021, the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners amended its agreement with the Public Building Authority of Rutherford County, the PBA, to authorize an expenditure not to exceed $6,363,066 for the building. And whereas the PBA and contractor for the building have negotiated the additional funding needed and allocated a portion of the county of $655,392.44 plus $25,000 for a PBA-controlled contingency fund. And whereas the additional funding for $683,092.44 will be derived from the General Fund Development Tax Reserve. And whereas the aforementioned agreement with the PBA will require an amendment to authorize the additional funding. Now you get to hear the section again. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the funding for all aspects of the building be increased to $7,043,452.44, and the general fund be amended as follows: to transfer additional funds to the Capital Projects Fund for the project, a decrease in restricted fund balance of $680,393 and increase expenditures transfers to other funds, $680,393. Therefore, be it resolved that the county mayor and any other necessary officials of Rutherford County shall be and are hereby are authorized to execute an amended agreement with the PBA, a copy of the same being attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein at length by reference as if set forth herein at length verbatim, to oversee the design, construction, and furnishings of the building through completion. Resolved this 12th day of January, 2023. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
We have a motion and a second to approve item L1C. Questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have a
Sir,
question.
Commissioner Beverly.
This might be for Commissioner or Chairman P. This has been going on for quite some time. We had to renegotiate. Would we be able to share what the original request was, or how much over it was versus how much the county is covering, so we can see what the builder is covering for that overage?
I'd have to refer back to our finance director for those numbers. I don't have them with me.
Yes.
So in total, regarding this amendment, the project is over approximately $1,006,778.64. Out of that, $326,386.20 will be covered by the contractor. Now, on the surface, that's about a 60-40 spread around it. However, there are some unforeseen things that we were obligated to cover. So I don't want that to seem like we were bad at negotiating here. There were some things that we were contractually obligated to cover that we felt in that agreement. And then $140,000 of our portion was to expand the DMV. That was an estimate when we started the project, so that was not set as part of the original contract. So out of that overage, $140,000 was directly related to the DMV portion. We started with an estimate, and then we got final prices, and that came in over what the estimate was.
You had mentioned 60-40 was the split. Of that 60% we are covering of this overage, what do you estimate probably we were contractually obligated to cover versus the rest were up for negotiation?
If I could, so the deal ain't done yet because the commission ain't approved the funding yet, and so I hesitate to convey any sort of negotiations in that regard. But I can say that your county mayor, myself, your finance director, and counsel for the PBA and the chairman of the PBA worked very hard the last couple months trying to negotiate the deal, and at what we were trying to avoid was not going to litigation and having the project come to a halt. That was kind of the major point of emphasis, and we're almost there. We're almost there. So anyway.
So we have a good degree of confidence this is probably it.
I think that the arrangement as proposed is a fair shake to both sides, all things considered.
Other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Irwin.
Question for the finance director. Okay, where is I saw several funds referenced in the resolution. Could you clarify where the funding for the one-stop coming from, the amendment?
Are you talking about the $680,000 for the budget amendment?
Yes, sir.
That is coming from restricted capital projects fund balance account in our general fund. That is, so we were trying to avoid touching unassigned fund balance, and we had some leftover development tax money in the general fund. And of course, as you know, we've switched to an adequate facilities tax. And so it's very specific on what we can utilize those funds for, and this is one of those uses. So it's coming from a restricted capital projects fund balance in the general fund.
Is there an agreement currently signed by the contractor with PBA?
Commissioner, yes, that is executed, but it contains language that it is subject to the funding of this body.
Okay. Well, is there language in the draft, we'll call it draft agreement, saying the contractor is solely liable for further overruns?
There is language to that effect. So as part of what you heard in the resolution is that there is a replenishment in the amount of $25,000 contingency, because as part of covering the county's portion of this, we have depleted that contingency. But that $25,000 has got some limits on it and can only be used for unforeseen spec or design changes which are not the result of the contractor's misscope, design, planning, or other error or omission of the contractor. So it's very limited. It's a PBA-controlled contingency, and that was intentional in the language in the agreement.
And so the answer is yes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay, aside from the statutory holdback and the contingency money that we were just talking about, okay, is there any type of insurance or bond or anything along those lines that assures performance by the contractor?
Not as part of this settlement arrangement, and I don't believe that there was one placed into effect. I'll turn it.
We are withholding 5% retainage.
We are with. There's difference between a performance bond and a retainage. There is a 5% retainage.
Yeah,
holdback.
that's statutory. I understand
And that is still in place now. In terms of a performance bond to guarantee completion of the project, that was not originally part of the deal anyway, so it wasn't part of the settlement arrangement.
Okay. And just a couple more quick questions. Who supervises, I'm not looking for a name per se, but who supervises these contracts for the PBA?
The PBA has their own counsel. He's in the audience. If you have any questions for him, his name's Brick Murphy.
Okay, well, I was looking for not necessarily the lawyer, who I doubt is out there on the job every day. Does PBA have someone out on the job every day, like a project manager?
Oh, I see. So how it's typically worked up to this point, and if Mary stop me if I turn, but how it's worked historically up to this point is the county has appointed an owner's representative, and it's been our facilities director on these projects, and that's customarily been the kind of go-between liaison. I don't know if the PBA has their own person out there. I don't think that they do. It's generally somebody from the county.
Okay, so it kind of follow on to that. Who supervises the projects for the county? Who keeps up with the projects, is out on the job site, et cetera, for the county on a periodic or regular basis?
Commissioner, the PBA oversees the completion of the project through their architects and engineers, but there is no individual or entity that has day-to-day oversight of our projects, which is something, quite honestly, I hope to address with this body at a sooner date rather than a later date, as a legitimate need, because of the number of projects we have and the scope and complexity of those projects. Commissioner McAdoo has brought this to my attention on a couple of different occasions, and I know he will be bringing it up, and if he wants to comment at this point, it might be appropriate, but this is something I think, as a body, I'll be bringing before you to address.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Irwin. Anyone else? I think we've had a motion and a second. We're ready to vote. And we're voting on item L1C to provide Public Building Authority additional funding. Will be on the board, so please cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
21 yes.
Thank you. Commissioner P.
Mr. Chairman, the last item is item D, and it's a presentation of the debt service fund cash flow and debt management policy for the 3-star program. We normally have to do that once a year. This is for your presentation only. It's on your iPads. It's also on SharePoint. I'm not going to bother to read it. We did address it at our last budget meeting, but if you have any questions there, basically the 3-star program allows us to utilize grants that the state puts out, and because we're at the tier of 3-star, we get some preferential grants there. But if you have any questions, you can see me afterwards. I can tell you where to get to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner P. Any questions? Good. Moving along, Health and Ed, we've already had one report. Commissioner Dodd, I don't see him. Property Management, Chairman Alan McAdoo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our meeting will be January 26, 5:30 p.m. And a lot of questions were brought up tonight about one stop, and they definitely will be talked about in the committee meeting. We have been following up on that. We followed up on the PBA activity with Sturgeon, trying to take care of absenteeism, can't have meetings. And also we followed up on the dire need of a project manager, which will be discussed at our next meeting. We have a lot of projects coming on board, not only one stop, but we need a project manager. And in the past, we did have a project manager, but they decided to get rid of the project manager. So we're bringing one back, hopefully. And all this will be discussed on the property management, January 26, 5:30 p.m. Be on the agenda. If any commissioner want to join us, we welcome you with open arms.
Thank you, Chairman McAdoo. Public Safety, Chairman Pettis Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask that our chief would come forward and the director of public safety. I don't see him currently in the room, but there he is behind the post. Our meeting will be the 23rd of January. Anyone that would like to come and attend, you're welcome to come to our meeting. I don't know if I'll say open arms totally, but you are welcome to be a part of that committee if you could. And I'm just asking them forward for information that we may need in this next effort right there. Some of you may have noticed when I walked up what I had in my hand, because you saw it for so long, for so many years, when I would come up here to this podium. And yes, I'm still carrying this notebook, and I thought that I was pretty much through with this notebook over at Kittrell when we broke ground for that one, but I'm still carrying it, and I still got a lot of things in it. And when we dealt a while ago with dealing with the funds for the next buildings, I felt the pain of Commissioner James right here, because I've come up here so many times the same way, Commissioner, and I will tell you that I'm right there with you on that fight to get that station too, just as much as we have the others, because there's many of us that are in this room that have done that. We've worked hard to get all of these buildings here. So many of you have spent, I have to say, hours trying to get those buildings there, and what we've tried to do across this county as what their importance are and what their needs are to the communities around here, as well as not only within the rural areas of this county, but also what we mean to the city of Murfreesboro as well. And the reason I say that, I don't know how many of you knew this, but you probably have seen it or heard it about the accident on Fortress the other night, the two-vehicle accident out there on Fortress. That was a very bad accident. And, you know, you wonder, how can you have an accident like that where you have two people trapped within two vehicles on that highway and that road at the speed limit it's supposed to be? But we did, and that's within the city limits of Murfreesboro. The city of Murfreesboro responded, and they were in the process of trying to get one of the individuals out of the vehicle, and they realized they had two in separate vehicles. So they went about trying to get the other one, and they were calling for help, calling for another responder from the Murfreesboro department. So happened that was fairly close to our sort building out that way, and response come from the county. And we were there on the scene quicker than they could get any from the city. We were on the scene, we responded, we helped that individual get out of that car, provided the necessary aid that we could until medical services got there, due to the fact that we now carry paramedics, EMTs on a lot of our vehicles. But we got a very good response back from the city of Murfreesboro because of the response that come from our county departments. And that's what we're doing now. We're trying to build these departments up to that point, and the way we're going there. Every one of you, if you'll remember, in your file down here last month, you had a black invitation. And it was talking about a special awards banquet on December the 2nd. If you had the opportunity to go to that, and 3 of us did, I know Commissioner James was there, Commissioner Johnson and myself were there. It was the award ceremony for our Rutherford County Fire and Rescue. Here's the program for it. It was very well done. It was over here at New Vision Church. And if you could have seen the promotions, years of service, Fireman of the Year, Engineer of the Year, Officer of the Year, Volunteer of the Year, and the stories told about the rescues, lives saved within Rutherford County by those individuals, it'd make you very proud of what we have right now and what the future holds for what we can have. Now, you've just approved the finishing or the building of 2 more of those buildings that'll be coming online here in the next year or so, which we'll be very proud of, just as we're doing with Rockville and Kittrell. I was by Rockville today. They're in the process of putting up the sign out there now. They're putting up the parking lot lights. It's starting to look like it's ready to go in business. The things that we're missing out there on that station right now, I think, are things that have to deal with the electrical panel and things of that type. There's always something right now that we're short of. The window glass come in last week, and we now have windows in a fire station out there. But they are completing the insides of it, and it's starting to look like what we want it to look like, and what the plans are that I just gave Commissioner over here, Commissioner Davidson, tonight, so she can see what we're building. And then Kittrell is moving on rapidly as well. They are getting a lot of things done too, so we're to that point. We're also to the point now of staffing those buildings. We had a very good discussion at Public Safety. Everything from budget was sent back to Public Safety last month. It was discussed there by Public Safety. And then we had that discussion of that staffing, where we go from there, how we're going to man those stations. And yes, as was, I think it was mentioned in what budget this time, I think Commissioner Piercy had comments on there. And I really like what he said, is the fact that we're probably late on doing this. We should have done this earlier. He's totally right. We should have done that. But yet, it wasn't totally realized in the position that we would be as we are now. With the growth we're having, everything that is moving faster than anything we've ever had before. And now we got to do something to do that. So at that meeting, a motion was made by Commissioner James, seconded by Commissioner McMurray and Commissioner Oliver. And the motion that was to send to full commission was to affirm the direction towards a full-time professional fire and rescue service in Rutherford County. And that was the motion that they sent here, that we're looking for the full commission to give us direction on and where we go from there. And that's what I'm presenting here tonight. Now, within this motion right here, mainly what we're asking for is that we're saying that we're wanting to move in all these departments towards a full-time paid professional fire service. And that's what we're talking about in these services. Now, I know some of you are saying, okay, from what we've had, where do we go and how we change all of that? This will take a process of planning, a process of putting it all together and working that pattern out. As was said at that meeting that evening, we're not involved in pushing anyone out, moving somebody away, but it was mentioned that our fire and rescue service will take those individuals in and work with them and take them a part of being a part of that service. And we still need them. We still need those volunteers that we have currently. and try to fill this. If you think about Christiana out there now, we haven't built a station there yet. There's not a station sitting there, so we still need those individuals that are there. So what we will be asking for and what we will be doing, I've even spoke with the chief. I think I've mentioned this to our director, is that we go now and we set down a plan of action and how we carry about this and how we do this to work with everybody involved and put it all together and work from that direction. I also spent a day up here with our finance director. I know that question's out there too, the cost and how we do that. You know, putting a total cost and telling you how everything will cost all the way down the line, you're talking about something that you're talking about salaries of individuals. Well, last year we changed salaries suddenly on all those individuals by 20%. I can't give you those definites for those departments that haven't even been built out there. So these will be something we'll deal with as they come online one at a time, which will have to go through all of this same process all the time. But what I'm asking for tonight is that we move to affirm the direction towards a full-time professional fire department and fire service and rescue service within Rutherford County. So I'm making that as a motion at this time.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Now we're open for discussion on the motion.
Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman.
Beverly.
Just to clarify, and that was an excellent summation, but I have received many calls and concerns about this. And just to reiterate, when the sun comes up tomorrow, volunteers will still be answering calls. This is just sending this back to public safety for planning as we move in this direction and establishing direction, correct?
That's my understanding. Are we not correct?
Excellent, because for my district, for one, we definitely need the volunteers and will continue to need them, and that is something I'm committed to fighting for, and that I just wanted to make a point to stand up on that and make that a point. And I would like to get the Budget Committee's opinion on the future actions of this to make sure that they're included in this process.
Commissioner P.
Well, as you can imagine, I've got quite a bit to say about this resolution. For one, instead of being here tonight, should have gone to budget. We basically skipped our committee process, and I think that's a dangerous step to start taking. Whether you agree with it or not, you know, I think it's important that we maintain our committee process. Also, our public safety people, I've been on public safety most of my time up here on the commission, and I love public safety. My hearts are with our first responders, our firefighters, our police officers. That's actually the main thing that I wanted to work with when I came on the commission, and still do. But the problem that I've got, we've got, what, 5 new commissioners on public safety? And when you listen to their advice the other day, you heard from Chairman Reed, you heard from our Chief Farley, maybe Chris. I wasn't there because my wife was ill. If you notice, I'm usually sitting on the back row or somewhere in there, even though I'm not on public safety now, because it's important to me, but I couldn't make that one, and neither did Commissioner Beverly. The 2 commissioners whose district you happen to be talking about is serviced by Kittrell Fire Department. But y'all didn't ask our opinion. Probably didn't know to ask. You also didn't talk to Kittrell's Fire Board and ask them, hey guys, even though we told you when we came out with the PBA, we showed you this wonderful building, asked you what color you wanted it, showed you where your guys would be, and the question was asked how we're going to man these, you said, well, volunteers are going to man them. That's what our board was told. They hadn't been told anything different, as far as I know, from these guys. Now, y'all didn't know that. You didn't know to ask them. Like I said, you're new to this. Had I been here, which I regret that I wasn't, you could have asked those questions, or at least to me and how I felt about it. Yes, I think that the fire departments are changing. And I'm going to give you an idea of the cost since Commissioner Beverly mentioned cost. It's around $955,000 to man a station with 15 people, basically $1 million a year. Well, that means that Kittrell's, and I had my math wrong the other day, I said that we'd actually save the county $20 million if you use today's money, $1 million a year for manning. We've actually been closer to $31 million since I think we've been in business right at 31 years. But just putting that aside, I think it should be respectful that we would hear from the board out there and see. For one thing, the board out there buys trucks just like some of the other boards do. We bought one tanker, and it's about $400,000. Okay, they've got to pay for that somehow or other. Y'all didn't bother to ask if that would make a financial hardship for this group. You know, those are some questions that should have been asked and should still be asked. And the reason I'm bringing these up, you know, I am not against the fire department. I'm not against Larry Farley or anybody else that represents our fire departments. As a matter of fact, and I'll say this again, Larry, you can deny it if you want to, but I'm probably the reason you have got a job as a firefighter and chief of this department, because I fought long and hard to get a full-time firefighting service here in this county. And it wasn't a easy lift at that time. And people said, well, it's going to cost us a lot of money. Yeah, it did. At the time, Wilson County was paying over $8 million a year. You know, we're just now getting to that. But our volunteers have saved us a lot of money. That's my point. Now, I keep hearing that we don't have any volunteers anymore. Well, that's not true. We've got volunteers, and I think it'd be nice if public safety actually heard from them too, and what their ideas are and what they would like to see. Also, the chiefs out there, you know, they can talk to you about manpower and how that goes. We had an instance, I guess it's about 4 years ago, maybe a little less than that, where we had a slew of firefighters just decide they were going to quit. We had 3 firefighters left to respond, okay? Well, we quickly built that back up to almost 30 people. Now, we've got, last time I talked to the chief, which was about a week and a half ago, he has 13 active firefighters, which even when we had 30 when I was firefighting, usually you had a corps of 7 to 12 people that made your fires. My point is, you know, we have people that are willing and able to volunteer and to save you this money. Now, if you're talking about manning 3 more stations, another $3 million a year, you know, and here's part of the problem. You can't just say, well, I'm going to raise taxes and we'll take care of that. That money has to come out of SIDUS funds. And as I can tell you right now, through my knowledge, there is no more SIDUS money for those positions. Now, that's part of the reason this has been a slow growth over the years. We are growing, and as we grow, our SIDUS tax money has increased. You know, that's part of the reason Mayor Burgess, for instance, said, hey, we can't grow this any faster without doing, you know, large tax increases. And even then, you've got to have the source of funding, and that's the SIDUS tax. Now, the other thing is a fire tax. Now, Commissioner Reed wants to start a fire tax out there at Rockville and Eagleville. Knock yourself out, buddy. I don't want one over at Kittrell. I don't know whether you do it at Lascassas or anywhere else, but I think steady pace that we have been taking in maintaining and making sure that we've got coverage, and we've got to have coverage. That's why Kittrell started the fire departments to start with. We had houses burning down. We didn't have a fire department close to us. So that's why we started it and worked so hard over the years, and we're mighty proud of that tradition and still want to continue that and still save the county money. Now, Williamson County, people will tell you, well, this doesn't work. Well, Williamson County, which is a lot richer than us, they're 100% volunteers. What'd you say? Well, yeah, they're 100% volunteers. Now, they do have some paid drivers that are public safety officers or something like that, and they answer to those fire boards. But they are volunteers, and part of the way they get volunteers is they ask people if they would be interested in having housing in their fire departments, and they sign a contract for a minimum of 40 hours a week their housing, and they have to fight fire. Now, they have to be certified, they have to be trained, and we can do that. I've actually talked to some people out here at our local university, and they're actually on Christmas break and they're not going to be back, so I'll have some answers. But I would say we could easily pick up more volunteers to do this and save us a lot of money. That's up to y'all, but I would like to see this go back to public safety. May not change anybody's mind, but I think it's only fair that you hear from these fire board members, you hear from these fire chiefs, you hear from these volunteer fire departments, and you hear from the commissioners of those districts how they feel about it. Having said that, I want to make an amendment to this motion that this goes back to public safety for review.
Just to let you know, we have a planned meeting January 31st with the Kittrell Fire Department to discuss some of these things.
And just to let you know, that would be after the fact.
We have a motion. It's been seconded. Now we have a proposed amendment to the motion, and it's been seconded. So we need comments, questions on the amendment.
Mr. Commissioner.
Commissioner Oliver.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the history, Commissioner P. Granted, I, along with my colleagues, are new and novice as it relates to participating in this forum, but I am not a novice when it comes to professionalism. And I am absolutely an advocate for skilled, educated professionals with the money that's being put into these buildings, having those professionals that are, again, skilled, educated part of the force. And I'm not so sure if sending it back, like you said, it's going to change our minds, but I'm not so sure if, with the growth of Rutherford County, if we still need to be putting all of our eggs in the hat of volunteerism. And that's just my position.
Mr. P.
And again, I know you don't know, but to be a volunteer firefighter, you have to go through firefighter training, the same training that paid people do. Fire really doesn't know the difference from whether you're paid or you're a volunteer, but the state requirements are that you have to be certified, be a certified firefighter, the same as a paid firefighter. So any of those guys that are out there volunteer have had the same training, and they had to pass skill tests to become a firefighter. So as far as professionalism, they have it.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Beverly.
Chairman Reed, I guess this question is more directed to you. What input do you feel like, once we move forward, volunteer fire departments will have in this plan? How do you see them being vocal? And just to explain, because I think there might be a misconception there that they're not being shut out once this is done.
They're not being just thrown out in the cold and what we're talking about there. As we go in to build these, we have to have them where we don't have fire departments right now, and we will work with them there. Now, as we go along, they will come under the fire and rescue direction and where we do that. Somewhat like they are now. They would just not be going out totally on their own, whatever. We'll still be making calls to them. We need you there. We need you to go do this. We need you to work with there. Then when the buildings are completed or whatever, they will be asked to come and be a part of us. And we'll still use volunteers can be a part of us and join and work with us wherever they wish to work with us. And we'll work with that. And that's why I was saying we've got to do a planning. We've got to do some of that and get it all together. Now, I know Commissioner P. mentioned the fact about Williamson County. Yeah, Williamson County does have some volunteers out there. They mentioned the fact of maybe how many they have. Their percentage is not as high as what their total number, just like what we have here. They also, where we have a $6 million budget, they right now have $11 million budget over in Williamson County. So, you know, it's all in how you do it and what you do there. But Chief Farley, would you like to answer some of that? Or?
As far as the qualifications and training, we just hired 19 firefighters to come on board. They have no experience whatsoever. They'll be going through a 600-hour class. The qualifications of volunteer, they go to a 64-hour class. And then they have to go through a live burn at the academy. And if they choose for, they can get commissioned. But the difference between a volunteer firefighter they require for 64 hours and paid is 600 hours. We have paramedics, AMTs on all of our trucks. We provide the same medical care as EMS, we just don't transport.
Thank you. I also work with volunteers. I understand the importance of volunteers. My question for you is, I understand Kittrell's probably doing pretty good over there, but I'm curious if out in the county, if there are some areas where you are short on volunteers and it's absolutely crucial that we move this forward in certain parts of the county.
We're short all across the county in volunteers. And I'm basing that not on what I think, but based on what my firefighters on the scene tell me. And there's a place for every volunteer in the county to come on board. We require people to go through a 600-hour class, and my department this year has over 10,000 hours of training that they continue to do. And we also require people to go through a physical ability test. And if you apply for our department and you fail that test, you don't get an interview. My commitment to keep the volunteers going is that we bring them on board. They don't have to have an ability test. They just need to be willing to come and volunteer. We've got 82 employees now, and I've probably got 50 fire instructors who are highly qualified. We will train them on any topic they want to train on, and I think really it'd be a lot easier on them because they can actually come in and pull shifts and select their time they want to volunteer. But based on what we're seeing out in the field, especially in the daytime, it's very far and few between.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Beverly.
So, to summarize,
let me kind of point out one thing. We had a motion, then we had another motion to send it back. That motion, from a legal perspective, overrides the original motion if it's approved. And I want our comments to be directed at the motion that Commissioner P made, which is to send it back.
That's exactly.
Direct your comments to the motion that Commissioner P made.
The intention is to transition to a full paid fire on a staggered basis, correct? Not all at once.
Not all at once.
Excellent. Now, my next question is, when do we expect that the current buildings under construction will be filled with firemen?
The one at Rockvale, I think, do you have a final figure of when we'll complete that? Because we've heard so many. February, I'm thinking.
Approximately February 1st.
Approximately February. I know they're still talking about some of this, something with the generator or something maybe in March, but I think they said they can override some of that till then. We're looking at February now. The thing is, those firefighters have already been made available. That's already in the budget. The firefighters that would go into Kittrell are in budget. We're building Walter Hill. That's already a manned fire station anyway. We're just basically replacing it. The only other firefighters that we'll be adding into a new budget will be at Lascassas. That building hasn't even had a groundbreaking. So you're talking about next year or later into the year of next year before that building would ever be into it. So those firefighters, I guess we'll be talking about into the next budget.
And that's exactly my point. We have already in the budget the firemen that are going live February or March, but that's not the root of what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with how are we transitioning from volunteer to paid and including the volunteers that are sitting out in the crowd right now. We're saying it won't be an issue to some fire departments when we look at funding for another year. What's the problem taking a breath and sending it back for 1 month, giving volunteers an opportunity to speak at public safety just to be heard? I spoke to one who has been involved for over 25 years. I think we owe him a month.
Anyone else? P.
I volunteered for around 15 years. I wasn't in the service, but that time volunteering, I kind of look on that as my time for the service. And that had to involve pulling friends that had died in fires out of buildings, pulling wreck victims out, helping children that are maimed in a wreck. It's the thing that I hated worse. But it's something that you do for your community. Now, Rockvale Eagle, they got a high school, they got middle schools and grammar schools, and they've got a good founding for their community again. One of the few things that we still got out at Kittrell is that volunteer fire department, which is a good part of our community. People love to go over to the ham breakfasts, they support those guys, and it's a community service. And they know that if they call, that their neighbors are going to come help them out. You know, I've heard you say a couple of times, we're going to let these guys continue to volunteer. You know, I've heard that before. I really did. I heard that when they took over the volunteer department out at Walter Hill. And I think that they kept one person and they put the rest of them on the road. So I see some nods back there. Maybe some of those guys were from Walter Hill. But I know how this goes. But I think that we owe these people, just out of a courtesy, to hear them out. Let them have their say. You haven't done that. I would ask you to please delay this a month. It's not going to make any difference. As far as manning, if you decide to go ahead and let them man Kittrell stations with full-time employees. But the other thing that they've just told you and you're not listening, they said, we're hurting all over the county, especially during the days. Well, guess what? You got 15 firefighters. To make a fire unit, it takes 4 men. Well, he said he had 19, I'm sorry. I don't know how many he's got total, but if you put 4 in each one of those volunteer stations Monday through Friday, let them work a 40-hour shift, and no, it wouldn't always be a 40-hour shift. They might be in the middle of a fire or helping on a wreck or whatever. You would actually help coverage countywide. Now, if they truly cared about the response in this county, that's what they would do. That's why I say this needs to go back and be discussed at public safety. Thank you.
Our public safety director has some figures. I think that he can shed some light on this. Chris?
First, let me say that myself and Chief Arley, this is where we started as volunteer firemen. Did it for many years. Life changes and we have to make decisions for our families and things. And I think these gentlemen have served tremendous hours, tremendous work. However, we kind of struggle when it comes to participation. Not to their fault. It's due to their careers that they're seeking a dollar, to their families to spend time going basketball, horseback riding, whatever that may be. That's not the issue. They are very highly respected. I've known Mr. Roger for many, many years. So, you know, with Chief Farley bringing to our attention that there was some struggles in the field with personnel, I went back to review personnel records and reports. Unfortunately, 99% of these reports don't include what personnel responded from the volunteer fire departments. So I had to pull data from a different place. And you remember that we put in place an $18 million radio system so that we could keep up with the person that's on the other end of that radio. So I have found out that approximately $336,000 worth of portable radios have not been turned on the volunteer side in the last 3 months. And that's how I can gauge their activity, because I can't base it on the reports because the names are not in there or the numbers. So I wanted to let you know that that's how I had to pull our data. Now, by law, that volunteer fire departments are supposed to fill those NEFA reports out completely, and including personnel and how many was going. And we can put a number in there on the front part of that, but we need to know names. So we try to pull names, and they're not there. Let me be very clear that our volunteers do the best that they can. This is not us against them. This is not a competition. This is reality when somebody needs their fire put out or rescued, or even have chest pain down the road. It's about life and death, and trained personnel that can attend to the patient that's there. And it could be your family. No doubt our volunteers do a great job. We want to embrace that. We want to bring them in and have them a home just as they got right now. Those are the numbers that I have pulled, and those are the realities.
Commissioner P.
Well, Chris and I have had this discussion, and just to tell you, when I was a volunteer firefighter, I was assistant chief at Kittrell. He was assistant chief over at Rutherford. He was assistant chief over at Lascassas, and then became chief. So we've walked in shoulder to shoulder on fires. And I'm going to tell you, if I was choosing up sides to go in and fight fire, it'd be these two guys to start with. But, and not others that are sitting out in the audience there. So it's like Chris said, this is not an us against them. This is about money. This is about making sure that we can get response. One thing that he didn't mention, yes, he is getting numbers from keyed up mics, which they can identify. Thank God. That doesn't mean anything to y'all, but it does if you've ever had a radio and somebody's sitting on their mic and you can't talk and you need to. But anyway, I see nods all over the place here. But I still would like to say, these guys don't respond with their radios now. They respond with a thing called a cell phone and an app called I Am Responding. So they don't know how many people they've got. And I agree with Chris, they should be writing that down. But again, I say if you want better coverage in this county right now, the best thing to do is take those people and man them Monday through Friday in those 4 stations.
Back in 1990, when Commissioner P was up with Kittrell, we'd have a structure fire in Lascassas that kept together, put 40, 50 people on the scene. You can believe me or you can believe Commissioner P, but I'm telling you, when we respond to Kittrell, we get 1 man in a truck. If that man is on shift, we don't get anybody. There are some departments that don't even respond in the daytime. And if the most we usually get on the scene is maybe 2 or 3 people. And most of the time it's just 1 or 2. So that's the facts. So I'll leave this with you right here. We cover the interstate I-24. If your family, your wife and your children are traveling down the road and somebody hits them just like on Fortress and that car flips, they're trapped in that vehicle. Do you want somebody who might respond, or do you want a guaranteed response? That's as plain as I can put it. Because when you're in the NBA and you're trapped and you have medical issues, you want somebody to get there as quick as they can and be skilled and knowledgeable of what they're doing. And that's what we're asking for. I have no problem with volunteers. Our volunteers are very efficient about bringing tankers, bringing brush trucks, doing what they can. It's not their fault. Nationwide, volunteer firefighting is down 80%. When we went to Williamson County, we talked to them. They're spending $11 million. I said, how many firefighters do you have? He said, we have about 200. I said, how many of them are active? He said, about 15%. You do the math on a whole county. I've got guys that volunteer in Williamson County that are paid firefighters, and they said a lot of times it's only 2 or 3 on a truck, in one truck. They got brand new apparatus over there sitting in stations that never roll. This is coming from my people who work for me, who volunteer over there because they have a free place to stay. So I'm just gonna lay it on the table, and if it's my family, and this is nothing against the volunteers, but I want somebody who can get there and be efficient and get my family out. I'll just leave it at that.
Yes, Commissioner Rather.
Chairman Phillips, this is my second term. I still consider myself a new commissioner, so I'll make that clear. The sheriff, and going back another sheriff or two, we had reserve deputies. I was one of them. I was required to go through a year, I believe, of training. Captain Spence, or Chief Spence was my captain, extensive training. And then we were required to work 40 hours a month, I believe is what it was. Required, or we get kicked out. You had to do it. You had to log it in. We had a book. You had to log it in. I've been listening to this, and I keep hearing volunteer, and we're in the volunteer state, so I get it. Maybe we just look at them differently and call them reserve firefighters, but you have to, we've got to have the qualifications, which I would say all of them already have, but they're going to be required to work so many hours and log it in, use the radios, but consider them reserve firefighters instead of just a volunteer, which is semantics. A reserve deputy is a volunteer deputy. I didn't get paid a dime. And I've been on about every call I think I can go on, except a murder. I've been to the suicides and the car wrecks and domestic violence and everything else. But I think that's where we were headed. Even on public safety, we wanted this commission to say, yes, let's go in that direction. Now, is that going to happen in the next month? Maybe not in the next year. But we wanted the whole group to say, hey, let's go in that direction and see where it leads, because there's needs there that need to be addressed. This isn't a commitment to make it happen. In my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the full commission saying, let's go in that direction and see what happens. So I support the motion. Coming back to public safety, as the vice chairman, of course, I just make a motion to approve minutes, and hopefully Pettis will never be absent, and I have to fill in for him. But going back to public safety, we're liable to come back to the full commission and say, okay, we came back with the same answer. Going in that direction, then public safety can go back and bring the volunteers in and discuss this with them and talk to them about obligations and work out the details. So that's all I have to say.
Mr. Chairman.
Mayor Carr.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Rather, for those comments. I think, first of all, let me say that I brought this to the attention of Chairman P. that we were spending $40 million of ARPA money for state-of-the-art, first-class public safety buildings. And it made sense with this county being the fastest-growing county in the state, and the demands of the public are what they are, that we meet the demands and requirements of the community. That in no way ever was it said or implied or was it intended that we would leave our volunteer fire department behind. Quite the contrary. Everybody I've spoken to on this matter has said they are going to be an integral part of this going forward. It's just that with the requirements of this community and the growth that we're sustaining, we need to move forward with a professional fire service, just like we have a professional EMS service, just like we have a professional law enforcement service. It's the same thing. And the volunteers are a necessary, integral part of this. So what I asked Commissioner P to do is to bring this to the full body for a stated direction. He did this at my request because of the spending we were putting forth in the public safety buildings. It had nothing to do with abandoning the volunteer firefighters, none whatsoever. Never did that even come up. As a matter of fact, in numerous discussions with Chief Farley, I said, I want a plan put together between you and Commissioner Reed about how you were going to integrate them. As a matter of fact, I want the volunteers involved in that discussion, that very necessary discussion. And so this is not something we're going to reach over and flip the switch. This is a stated direction, and over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, how do we implement and integrate the volunteers into a full-time professional force? That's all this is. So I'm asking you to support the resolution. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Chairman Pro Tem.
Motion to cease debate and call for the vote.
We have a motion to call the vote. I need a second. Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Any opposed?
Mr. Chairman.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner Johnson.
I may be mistaken because it's been a while. I got a new Robert's Rules of Order. But I wore my other one out. And I think that you can't cease the debate as long as everyone that wants to debate or to say something has had a chance. We've had multiple people to address this issue, but you still have some that have not had a chance.
I got legal direction. You may be right. I may be wrong.
I don't think that's correct. Hundreds of times over the last 20 years we've called for the question.
And Mr. Chairman,
and it ceased debate.
I do have the floor.
And it called for the vote.
Hold on, you guys. Commissioner Johnson.
In the past, I know, and especially since I left here 12 years ago, but I'm back, I've watched the proceedings, and we've had people sitting back, never be recognized, call for the question. It's happened hundreds of times, but that's not correct. That's not the way you do it. There's a lot of things that have been done that shouldn't be done, and I'm just calling
may be right
for advisement.
We're taking a couple of minutes to make sure.
So the way that I understand Robert's Rules of Order, if a previous question has been called and that is seconded, that is not debatable, and the vote has to pass by a 2/3 vote, which I believe it did, although it wasn't roll call. I'm not so sure that there were enough nays. I'm not aware of anything in Robert's Rules that would take precedent over the previous question to allow each individual commissioner to speak on the matter if the previous question motion was approved.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Johnson.
I agree with that, but I was standing and asking Mr. Chairman before the second. I wasn't recognized.
Commissioner Johnson, I respect everything you just said, and if you have comments before we have a vote, I would love to hear your comments. So if you were standing to speak, I apologize. I may have been out of order, and you are more than welcome to speak and take as much time as you want.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a lot more to say, but I won't. I'll just say, if volunteers are an integral part of this discussion or this process, then I feel that, yes, they are an integral part, but they've been left out of the discussion. That's what Commissioner P is asking for, is for this to go back to committee and them to become an integral part of this and let them have their say. They've got a lot of input that needs to be input. It's not right now, it's being kept out. But I don't mean that in a bad way. Nobody intentionally did it, I think, but they haven't had their say, and they should be able to. They have a lot to say that will help the whole process, I'm sure. And that's all I'm asking for, and I think that's what the motion was for, was to let it go back to public safety and have a meeting with all of the integral parts. Thank you.
The question has been called, it's been seconded, it's been voted on. So the question's been called for, it's been voted on. We're ready to vote on Commissioner P's motion. And if you would, Commissioner P, restate it exactly for the record.
I ask that we send this back to public safety so we can get input from the fire boards, the volunteer firefighters, the fire chiefs, and let them become aware of everything. You know, they've heard input from many people, but they haven't heard from them. And I want the board to know how the fire boards out here are being affected, especially financially. But this is for it to go back to public safety for reconsideration, or at least for those folks to be heard.
Everyone understand that motion?
Is this a motion or an amendment to the original motion?
Well,
not the way I understand it, you guys. You guys are wearing me out tonight, so yeah. If you would comment on
sure.
that.
So I know how Commissioner P originally phrased it as an amendment. I think that's more form over substance, but if we're getting hyper-technical, really his true intent, I think, is what's called an incidental motion. So your main motion on the table was what Commissioner Reed had. Commissioner P made what's called an incidental motion, one of which was to commit this or refer it back to a committee. So that takes precedence. And so you're just voting on Commissioner P's motion to send it back to public safety. And if that passes, the original resolution, the question that Commissioner P had raised goes back for consideration at the Public Safety Committee. That make sense?
Everybody clear?
So you're just voting once, and if you vote yes, it's going back down to public safety.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
so to be clear,
Johnson.
We did have a motion and a second, and then Commissioner P got up and made a motion, because I didn't hear the second. I heard the resolution read. I didn't hear that as a motion, and I didn't hear a second. I may have just missed that. But Commissioner P got up, and that's when he said, I'll make a motion. That's the only motion.
We had a second. We'll tell you who it was.
Mr. Chairman.
Anybody want to raise their hand real quick?
I think Mr. P's motion is more accurately characterized as an amendment and restatement of the prior motion, which would then take over the other.
Thank you. We're getting too many opinions. We just had our county attorney tell us exactly what's going on, and that's the way it's going to be. I think we had the original motion by Commissioner P was seconded by, okay. That cleared up.
That's your vote.
I'm sorry. Okay, we're going to vote, you guys, and we'll be on the board for this. Do you have anything to add, Commissioner Reed? Okay. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so what are we voting on? Because as it's been stated, it was 2 motions. So there was a motion and a second, then another motion and a second. The first motion and the second was not voted on. So what are we doing now?
Let me try it one more time. Commissioner Reed made a motion that in essence would state that the county is moving long-term toward full-time firefighters, in essence, full-time, not immediately, but moving in that direction. And it was seconded. The incremental motion was made by Commissioner P. To send it back to public safety to have a discussion as to how the volunteer firefighters fit in to our long-term plan. So we're voting on that motion to send it back for further discussion as to how our volunteers fit in to our long-term plan.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm sorry?
There was already a motion on the floor that was not acted upon.
Correct.
Does an incident, is there precedence in Robert's rule that says an incidental motion supersedes the motion that's on the floor?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
And where is that? Because I was looking for it and couldn't find it.
Sure, yes, I'm sorry. And I'm going to read from this. And pardon me, my vernacular was incorrect. I meant to say subsidiary motion, not an incidental, but it's form over substance. Let me read it to you. The subsidiary motion to commit or refer, it takes precedence over the main motion, over the subsidiary motions to postpone indefinitely and to amend, and over the incidental motions. It takes precedence over debatable appeal that adheres to the main question. Goes on to say this can be applied to main motions with any amendments or motions. This is on section 13:7. It requires a majority of vote. It must be seconded. It is debatable, which there was healthy debate on whether to commit this back to public safety or rather vote on the question tonight. And the debate can only be extended to the desirability of committing the main question and to the appropriate details of the motion to commit. So I know it seems odd that there was a motion pending on the table, but the motion to commit it made by Commissioner P. envelops the entire question. And so before this body can vote on the question presented by Commissioner Reed, there was a motion to say before we do that, we need to send this back for further details and investigation to the Public Safety Committee. So if that motion passes, it sends the question back down to the committee.
Yes to back, a vote for yes, it's back to the public safety.
Correct.
Here we go. We're going to be on the board. So if you would, please cast your vote, and it's on Commissioner P's motion to send it back to public safety. Please cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Wait just a second. Can I change my vote? I think I hit the wrong button.
That's your opportunity.
Hold on. Okay, thank you.
I'll read it again. Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
16 yes, 5 no.
So this will go back before Public Safety at its next meeting. And if I'm not mistaken, that'll be maybe next week. Is that right, Chairman?
Say one more thing.
Sure.
I think there's more, have said more than I have tonight. But let me say, we will do this. We'll send it back as you have requested. We'll do as you have requested. I think we were pretty much going to head in that direction anyway and discuss that somewhat, and that's what we had planned, and we will do this as you have requested.
That meeting will be held on the 23rd?
Yes.
Very good. Public Works and Planning. Commissioner Cush.
Vote on the original amended motion. We don't have. No, the original motion is amended. Not passed. Now we vote on the.
Things right. I'll again, Commissioner Gooch, if it helps. So this is a different paragraph here. It says the subsidiary motion to commit or refer is generally used to send a pending question. A pending question. That's what we had on the table. You had a pending question to a relatively small group of selected persons, a committee, so that the question may be carefully investigated and put into better condition for the assembly to consider.
Okay. Commissioner Cush. Chairman Cush.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, everybody. 9 of you will have no earthly idea what I'm talking about. But under your tab in Public Works, you will see a green-lined letter of intent from Pratt Industries. This document was discussed at the last full commission that was chaired by then Mayor Ketron. There was a motion from the floor at that last Ketron commission to bring this letter of intent to discussion. It was voted on and passed, and the full commission then charged the Public Works Committee, which had originally voted this letter of intent down, to reopen it and discuss with Pratt Industries the items of this letter of intent. To give you just a brief bit of history, Pratt Industry is a manufacturer of corrugated boxes. They also have a division called Pratt Recycling, in which they take used corrugated boxes and recycle into new boxes. They wanted to enter into an agreement with Rutherford County on property on Sanger and Florence Road, which is a nice piece of property that has the unusual characteristic of having a rail spur. That original agreement that Mayor Ketron and Pratt discussed was laid out in this letter of intent of a 30-year, $1 per year lease in which Pratt was going to put a building on, basically a MRF, which is a place to recycle cardboard. We would get some benefit for the recycling of the cardboard. At the end of 30 years, they would sell us the building back if we wanted it. But bottom line is the two attorneys, our county attorney and Pratt's attorney, went to work on the letter of intent. There was discussion back and forth, and at the end of the day, we being the Public Works Committee, did not like the language. We did not think it put us in the best light. We didn't like the deal. Also in the meantime, new Mayor Carr had communications with the Chamber of Commerce about that particular piece of property, and they said, you know, it would be silly to tie that valuable piece of property up for 30 years at $1 a year because of the unusual content of that rail spur, which is highly valuable to the commercial industrial market. So we had no real intent or desire to move forward. So, as due diligence and to close the loop, the Public Works Committee last week said, hey, thanks but no thanks, we're not interested, so we are bringing that back to the full commission to give you our recommendation that to us the deal is dead and would like your support on that. Now, however, you all know that we are going to build a transfer station. We would like to extend the ability for Pratt to reach out to us and talk to us about the potential recycling at the transfer station. But just to let you know, Pratt has not made any phone calls or reached out to new Mayor Carr since his inauguration. Inauguration? Is that the right word? Swearing in. You may have had you may have had your own inauguration at home, but swearing in, right? So Pratt has kind of dropped off the radar as well. But anyway, as Chair of Public Works, I want to bring to you, to close the loop, that we think it's a bad deal and we'd like to move on to do something else. So that's my report. Any questions? And I don't know if you need a motion. We do? I'd like to make a motion that...
Second.
Everybody understand the motion? You may make it a little bit more.
The motion is the Public Works Committee would like to reject and cancel the potential letter of intent with Pratt, and case closed. We have a second by Chairman McAdoo.
Everyone understand now? Cancel the letter of intent with Pratt Industries. We're going to be on the board for this. If no other questions, please cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote, please.
21 yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. I believe Chairman Cush, your next meeting is the 7th?
That's correct. February 7th at 5:30 p.m. in this room.
Thank you very much. Steering, Legislative, and Governmental Committee, Chairman Craig Harris. Any report?
No report, Mr. Chairman. However, we have a meeting with our delegates January 17th at 6 o'clock in here. I have had questions. I sent it out to all of you. If you have something other than that, you need to let me know. It's a courtesy that we give them a heads up on there so they have, you know, answers instead of gibberish and going back and forth. So we, January 17th at 6 o'clock. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. January 17th, meeting with our annual meeting with our legislative delegation, and then his regular meeting is scheduled on the 6th of February. Getting back to Health and Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next meeting is January 24th at 6 p.m. in these chambers. 3 items of interest. The 3 high school additions we've been hearing about for some years. The first opening is scheduled for late this month. It may or may not be on time, but for sure in February, those bid packages will be complete and bids will be starting to open either the last week of January or into February. And we anticipate all 3 being opened by the end of February. Another point of interest is the community care contracts and mission has reverted back to Health and Ed. So guys on Health and Ed committee, property management took it on to talk about lease, real property, their domain. But at the last meeting when we heard contracts and leases, we realized this is getting into the mission of our board. So you guys on Health and Ed anticipate educating ourselves on community care, and then we will set up communication with the attorneys and the administrators and get their contract in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And pretty much concludes our agenda. We're going to other business, and there's a couple of pretty important pieces of legislation that's coming up under other business, and I think Mayor Carr is going to address the commission. So we have one on a resolution on the County Powers Relief Act, and then some updates on our attempts to hire lobbyists. Mayor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have on your SharePoint a resolution that was drafted by Eric Hennessy and assisted by Nick Christensen, and basically it's the resolution basically stipulating or requesting that our Rutherford County delegation support an initiative. A little background, if I might. So last week I traveled to West Tennessee and spoke to the West Tennessee city and county mayors. Additionally, I spoke to some of the West Tennessee state representatives and state senators about this particular issue with regard to amending the County Powers Relief Act. Met with a great deal of support. I spoke with Murray County Mayor Sheila Butt last Friday and talked about this particular resolution and their financial investment into what we're trying to do. Make no mistake about it, Rutherford County is leading the way in this regard. This morning, I got up at 3 o'clock so I could be in Knoxville by 8, and I met with Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs. And what a fine man. As with all the mayors that I'm meeting and speaking with across the state in this regard. And I did my best to chit-chat for 4 or 5 minutes, and I think he kind of sensed that I wasn't doing real well, and he came right out and said, Knox County is in favor of what you're doing. Do you have a resolution? And I said, as a matter of fact, I do. And I gave him a copy of this resolution that's currently a draft, that's not passed. He said, can I take this and present it to my county commission? I said, yes, you can. You can amend it. You can plagiarize it. You can do whatever you want to suit your needs, and we would appreciate your support. What I didn't realize at the time is that Knox County already has under their employment a lobbying firm. And he said, I will instruct our lobbying firm to assist you and the firms that you are going to employ, we'll find out tonight, in this endeavor. It's that important to not just to us in Knox County, but for all of us in Tennessee. So with your permission, I'll read the resolution and hopefully receive a motion, a second, and a favorable vote. Whereas Rutherford County has experienced and will continue to experience accelerated growth that leads the country, and whereas the citizens of Rutherford County for far too long have been given the burden of paying for new development by ever-increasing property taxes. And whereas it is the desire of Rutherford County to have that growth pay for the expansion of services said growth necessarily requires. And whereas in 2006, the Tennessee General Assembly enacted the County Powers Relief Act, TCA 674-2901, which provided the authorities for counties to enact adequate facilities tax. And whereas the growth in Rutherford County has led to the need for expansion of county services, including but not limited to new schools, law enforcement, fire service, emergency management services, new roads, etc. The adequate facility tax on development allowed under TCA 674-2913 alone has proven to be woefully inadequate in meeting the demands for additional services of the county that it has experienced thus far. Whereas pursuant to TCA 674-2913, the County Powers Relief Act specifically forbid a county from enacting an impact fee. However, it excluded municipalities from this prohibition of enacting impact fees. Whereas in Tennessee Attorney General Opinion Number 07-161, December 11, 2007, the Tennessee Attorney General, also opined that the County Powers Relief Act does not prohibit cities from enacting impact fees. Whereas municipalities are specifically granted this authority to enact impact fees pursuant to TCA 62-201 and TCA 633-101 to fund the expansion of their services caused by growth. And whereas Rutherford County desires to be given the same opportunity afforded municipalities in determining how to best fund the expansion of services necessitated by accelerated growth. And whereas the Rutherford County Commission deems it to be in the best interest of Rutherford County and its citizens to request that the state legislature support an amendment of the County Powers Relief Act to allow counties of the state of Tennessee the same options granted municipalities when it comes to funding the expansion of services necessitated by accelerated growth. And whereas it is fundamentally unfair to require the citizens of Rutherford County to continue to fund the expansion of services caused by growth with ever-increasing property taxes, now therefore be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners to respectfully request that the Rutherford County Legislative Delegation support any bills presented to amend the County Powers Relief Act to merely allow the counties of Tennessee to be placed on a level playing field with the municipalities in our great state to determine the most conservative way to establish a means for funding the accelerated growth Rutherford County is experiencing without burdening the current tax base with increased property taxes. Be it therefore resolved that this resolution be forwarded by appropriate county officials to the Rutherford County Legislative Delegation and/or others as deemed proper. Resolved this 12th day of January, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner P. and a second by Commissioner Johnson. Discussion. Yes, Commissioner. I'm sorry,
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Harris.
I'm not necessarily against this resolution, but what I am against is this should have went through steering. And everybody understands that our committees are very important for us to run local government. You were put in those committees just tonight with the situation with public safety. That's a good example of how that is. Now, did the mayor do this maliciously? I do not think he did. But it's not going to happen again. Steering will block anything that goes through again without any legislation or anything that's government affairs that does not go through steering first. I'm not being overzealous here. I'm just simply telling you that there's rules and there's procedures of how we run this government. And it's important that we maintain those and stay within the committees. I have no problem with passing this. Me and you, Jeff, me and Mike, we know how hard we worked on this. I am for this, but I'm also for the process. And I hope that you will stand with me that when this happens and then we have to send it back to steering, you understand that's what we should be doing. All right? So I have nothing against this. And I'm going to defer to you, Chairman, on the next issue. And you know what we're talking about on that, and you can let the commission know about that on the reports and all that. Thank you.
Other discussion? Commissioner Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one quick question for the mayor. What is your provision in this piece of legislation based on a real estate transfer tax?
So the bill hasn't been drafted yet, or it hasn't been completed. It's been drafted, but there is a provision, a very specific provision in the bill that strictly prohibits a real estate transfer tax. So there is no misunderstanding that this is not about a transfer tax or a real estate tax. It's about allowing the counties to play on the same playing field that the municipalities have with regard to funding growth. A real estate transfer tax is not a part of that equation and will be prohibited within this bill.
Other questions? Commissioner Piercy.
Why did it not go through steering?
Nick, can you help me out here? Why didn't it go to steering? We had a timeline issue. Can you kind of explain the timeline issue for Commissioner Pierce?
Sure, yeah. So I think the lobbyist contracts, the approval for that went through steering, which is the next item. And the way I understood Mayor Carr's intention and wish here was to have something that the lobbyists could have at their fingertips to show the General Assembly, and that's what this kind of declaration by the commission was doing. And I guess how it all fell down, and speaking with the finance director too of how that process was going to occur, there wasn't a steering committee meeting that had fallen within that, and so from a timing perspective, and Mayor Carr wanting to get this done, that was his desire.
Thank you.
Other comments?
What does that mean, his desire? What does that mean? His desire. He doesn't dictate what we do. He don't dictate what we do. So I just don't understand, what does that mean, his desire? Are you saying that his desire supersedes the steering committee?
No, Commissioner, I'm not suggesting that. I didn't draft this resolution, so I reviewed it, and so it was a desire of Mayor Carr to bring this before this body.
So an explanation in this regard requires an understanding of the timeline that necessitated the actions that we took. First of all, there was no intent, ill will, towards circumventing any committee. If this body wants to send this back to steering, they certainly can do so. You absolutely can do that. So the chairman and I, Chairman Phillips and I, first discussed the need for a resolution maybe 30 days ago. And it was a result of a conversation where he informed me that this body, on two previous occasions, had already passed resolutions 21-0, requesting that our delegation do something with regard to impact fees and the inadequate facilities tax that we were burdened with. And he said, what we need is a resolution. That conversation literally took place at the end of December. And so we have in front of us now a Tennessee General Assembly that's already convened. That happened this past Tuesday. And so in an effort to expedite this matter before the Tennessee General Assembly with the appropriate resolution before the bill was put on notice and heard in committee, it would have been inappropriate for this body not to have been heard before the necessary committees in the Tennessee General Assembly. So that's why we're on this accelerated schedule. It has nothing to do with circumventing steering committee or its chairman, none, or any other committee for that matter. But having said that, if this body deems it in its best interest and it's most appropriate to send it to steering to debate, you can certainly do that. And we will halt our movement of any potential legislation to remedy this effect, because it would be inappropriate for me, as your mayor, to move forward with these lobbying agreements that we've got pending in front of you without a resolution from this body affirming what we're trying to do. It was strictly a timing issue. That is all. And I will absolutely yield to the will of this body.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other comments? Any others? We're ready to vote, and we're going to also be on the board for this. So if you would and you're ready, please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
18 yes, 3 no.
Motion carries. Other business, M2, lobbyist agreement, Mayor Carr.
So subsequent to that, back in, I'm not sure the exact date, Chairman, but this body authorized me to negotiate, or gave me the authorization to negotiate $100,000 for the professional services of the lobbyists necessary to move this agenda forward, particularly this resolution. I have these contracts in front of me for your approval, and I'll summarize them if you like. The first, by the way, the Rutherford County School Superintendent has already sent their signed contracts, so there are 5 lobbying firms working with Rutherford County and Rutherford County Schools. And so these are 3 of those 5. And the first one is Crux Strategies, and it is for $30,000 for a period through this particular Tennessee General Assembly, which will end on or about May 1st. The Poplar Group, the same duration, January 1st, 2023 through May 31st, 2023, for $25,000. And then finally, Will Denami, same period of time for $35,000, for a total of $90,000 for all three. The budgeted amount allowed was $100,000. And I'll be glad to take questions on these particular groups. When I was in the Tennessee General Assembly, I knew each one of these individuals, and they all went through the RFP process or were brought in to the RFP process by another suitor. So I'll be glad to entertain any questions.
Commissioner Harris.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me apologize to getting a little mad. It's just my character, and I apologize. I am upset because we got circumvented. Now, I have talked to the mayor about this lobbyist, and we have agreed that me and Jeff Phillips and him will talk on, he agreed that he'd have reports with steering every month. So, and if there's anything we need to do on a special meeting, I will call that. Like you said, this thing's for 4 months, so it's going to go fast. So we're going to have some reports, and we might have some, but I'll talk with the chairman on this, and we'll get together on dates, and I'll let you know.
Before we get discussion, we probably need a motion and a second. I have a motion to approve by Commissioner P. and second by Commissioner Johnson. Now we can have other discussion if needed.
Mr. Chair.
I think the date was our December meeting that we gave the authority to do that in December. Yes. Sorry, Commissioner.
Mayor, is this the motion that came out of purchasing?
It is.
Okay. If I remember correctly, and I was trying to look for the minutes, but I don't see them, is part of the motion was that you would make a report to steering, progress reports to steering and purchasing, and that if a decision needed to be made in a timely manner, that there'd be a special called meeting with steering.
Yes, and quite honestly, yes, and I made that suggestion. As a matter of fact, there was some discussion within purchasing with Commissioner McAdoo and I about the frequency of those reports, because initially the Tennessee General Assembly tends to grind along rather slowly, and then as they get toward the end, everything gets accelerated in a somewhat maniacal way, to be quite honest. So I don't expect to have reports, or if I do, really nothing to report in the first 30 days or 45 days. But as we get closer to the end, which would be the middle of April, maybe the end of April, I can see where I may need to reach out to this body or the appropriate committees maybe once a week. But that's just as facts determine it. I also want to say that once a bill sponsor is selected in the House and the Senate, which is why we need to be very careful and deliberative at this point, and which is why one of the reasons why these lobbying firms are so important. Once we find a bill sponsor in the House and the Senate, we effectively lose control over the bill. It's their bill. So we need to make sure that those sponsors are fully engaged in what it is that we would like to see in the form of an outcome. And so we've already got one caption bill pulled by Representative Sapicki and Representative Senator Hensley, and so we're looking for a alternative solution to Plan B as well. And of course, I'll keep you abreast as those move through committee.
I'm going to vote for this, but that's not the motion that came from purchasing.
I'm sorry, then clarify.
Do you have a copy of the minutes, Mr. Clerk? I don't think I've
Commissioner, I may have misunderstood your question, so.
The motion that came out of purchasing was what you said, and what you read, in addition to that the mayor would make progress reports.
Yes.
Basically twice a month, one to steering and one to purchasing.
I don't disagree with that.
But that's not in the motion that you read.
Mr. Chairman, I'll add that to my motion, that he will make those reports to steering and to purchasing.
Purchasing and also
as I need to be as needed.
If I may, all I was, and I think may I have overcomplicated. My apologies. I'm just a little tired. So if you'll So I don't disagree with your recollection of what was agreed to in purchasing. What I was trying to say is that in the first few weeks of session, there may not be anything to report because the bill hasn't been calendared in committee. That's all I was trying to say.
And we talked about that some of your progress reports, there may be nothing to report.
Right.
But the motion that came from purchasing, this is my point, I know it's not the motion that was read from the floor.
Oh, okay.
And that was my question.
Your recollection of the events is mine.
I made the motion, and so I know what it was said, but that's not the and I don't see the minutes. I don't think I've got an email of the minutes yet of the 10th meeting, but the motion included what you read in that motion, plus that the mayor will make progress reports to steering and purchasing, and if there's a timely decision that needs to be made, that you would call for a special meeting of steering.
That is correct.
And that half of the motion is not in the motion that you read. And I guess I'm just curious why that didn't make it into.
I see. I apologize. I see what you're saying. Then amend my motion, please, to reflect.
I think that's what Commissioner
Chairman,
P just
I'll
did.
second that addition.
Okay.
Already has.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll second that amendment.
Thank you. No, you are correct, and the motion does need to be amended in that regard.
Commissioner Johnson?
I think I seconded that motion to start with, and I'll second the amendment or the addition.
Very good. Let me just add one quick comment before this. We've had some discussion the last couple of days about special call meetings and those type of things. It could add an unnecessary expense to the county, but we will call those things as needed to update. There's a problem with calling those meetings because of a timing issue. You've got to advertise in the paper, and it has to be at least 5 days in advance. So that emergency contact would probably not be timely. So the mayor, your chairman, and the chairman of steering are going to meet on a regular basis, possibly once a week, to update, for the lobbyists to update us as to where we are. Anything that needs to be disseminated to the commission, we will figure out how to do that immediately. And it could be as simple as the written report that the lobbyist presents to us as to where we are. So we can get that information out a lot more timely than maybe calling a special meeting, which could take sometimes up to a week to accomplish.
I need to apologize to the mayor because I guess we're all tired, and I have a strike too now. But he was just, I guess, reading emotion, but was not making emotion. And so I think that
For the record, the mayor can't make a motion.
For the record, so I would probably say that Commissioner P would make the motion with the other items in it, and then you seconded Commissioner Johnson. Is that correct, Commissioner P?
It is, and that was my mistake, so that's 2 strikes on me tonight. But while I'm doing it, I'd like to add one more addition to this after I've sat here, and I've thought about this. At the end of their work for us, which is June 30th, sometime soon after that, I want them to report back to us, to give us a report on what they found out. Did they pass it? You know, whatever the results are. I'd like to give a result. They're working for us. Let them report to us. I'd like to ask that be added to that motion.
It will be done. Second. Final report?
Yes, second.
Yes.
I don't get to vote, just so everybody knows.
We haven't. We're still in discussion. Actually, what we're trying to work out are the reporting relationships, and we're committed to communicate on a regular basis, purchasing and steering, and also the mayor, your chairman, and the chairman of steering will also confer on a regular basis, possibly even once a week, as we get into this legislative session and receive reports from our lobbyist. Anything that needs to be communicated immediately, we will figure out how to do that. And it could be as simple as sending you the report from the lobbyist on a regular basis so that you'll know when we know, you'll know what we know and when we know it. So that's also a way that we're going to try our best to keep all of us informed on our lobbying efforts. This is kind of plowing new ground for us, so we're not exactly feeling our way through it, but we're trying to figure out what is the best way to get information to you without having to call a special meeting that could take a week or so for us to accomplish, and then the information not be timely. So we're going to try to figure that out, and I think that we'll be able to accomplish that. Commissioner Oliver?
Yes, sir. Are you speaking of information only, nothing that needs to be acted upon?
It could be something that needed to be acted on, and if it does need to be acted on, that's where we will call a special steering committee meeting. Good. Anything else?
And
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to be clear that the mayor was very supportive of the motion that came from purchasing, and I do apologize for getting it mixed up. Just want to go on record for saying that.
Anything else?
I don't usually make mistakes like that. I don't know.
We have a motion and a second concerning the lobbyist contracts. Any other discussion? For this will be on the board. Please cast your votes. Record the vote.
$21 yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. This brings us to the end of our agenda. Just to go ahead and pass along, our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, the 16th of February. There had to be some confusion by a couple of commissioners that related to our meeting dates. Let me go ahead and tell you that our meeting dates are always the second Thursday following the first Monday. Sometimes that's actually the third Thursday, but it's the second Thursday following the first Monday of every month. Our next meeting is the 16th, 6 p.m. Other business or announcements? Commissioner P.
Budget's next meeting is February the 9th. But the reason I got up I want to remind everybody for one last time that January 31st, we have to have in our financial disclosure reports. And if you don't have that done, you definitely could get a slap on the wrist.
Everyone kind of know what we're talking about. You're filing your annual ethics statement. It has to be done by the end of this month. Okay? Very good. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Beverly.
Just want to announce and remind everybody the drug court graduation is tomorrow at 10 o'clock at the courthouse. So I would love to see everybody there. So just want to make that reminder.
Anything else? Commissioner Cush.
I'm going to come to the front because it's easier and I'd like to look at everybody. First of all, this 2 hours and 40 minutes is nothing. This is a standard Public Works meeting time. First of all, Chairman Harris, you got to love his passion. Now, he is correct. Committees are important, shouldn't circumvent them, but sometimes there are extenuating circumstances. I think tonight was a proven extenuating circumstances. For those on steering committee, which I am, you guys might know that we tried to call a special steering committee this week in order to get this to steering to chat about. But because we have to post this in the paper so many days prior to a meeting, we couldn't even meet that timeline. So things you can't always, the play, you draw up a play, but you can't always, you got to call an audible. We called an audible. Omaha, right? So, Craig, I appreciate your passion. I know there was nothing nefarious, but it had to be done. But I appreciate your passion. Folks, some of us know, and I've been on the Planning Commission for over a dozen years, this potential resolution with the County Powers Act, this is a big deal. If we can get this through, and I'm telling you, no offense to Nick's firm, but his predecessor attorney and the predecessor attorney before him told us 1,000 times, can't be done. Too much opposition. Can't change it. You can't break down that door. Now, Mayor Carr and I we didn't really get off on the best of circumstances after his inauguration. But I'm telling you, this guy's a chopper. He's chopping wood every day. And we talked several months ago about planning and what we can and can't do. And I told him that the state has got us hamstrung, and he couldn't believe it. His jaw dropped. And here we are 3 or 4 weeks later. He's trying to get something big done. He's a chopper. So keep your fingers crossed. There will be opposition, but I'm telling you, if we get to the point where we can do an impact fee or development tax, whatever you want to call it, we're going to be fair. We're not idiots. We're all smart men and women here, right? We're not going to be a Williamson County and charge $25,000 a lot to develop. We know what to do, right? But anyway, I just want to thank the mayor for being a chopper, making another big slug at this. And Craig, I appreciate your passion.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'd just like to say a quick thank you to all those who worked at particularly the Almaville Convenience Center a few days after Christmas. I mean, the line was backed up, and they were very patient, the staff. And I'm sure it was across the board as well. So kudos to all those who worked those long, tiring hours and those bringing all the trash because it was strenuous.
Let me just say that there are 21 commissioners, 21 personalities. A lot of us have a D type of personality, which has a way of getting things done. We will not all agree on everything, but lively debate is healthy, not only for us as a commission, but for us as a county. Where I'll drop the hammer is if we get personal. Talk about the subject, talk about the subject matter, but don't talk about each other in a personal way. And once again, what we did tonight was healthy. Commissioner Johnson pointed out an error that I made, and I appreciate him doing that. And I have no doubt that he will do it again, and I will appreciate it at that time as well. So thank you for your attendance tonight, your participation in the process. To me, it proves that our process works. Thank you. Happy New Year. We are adjourned.